Welcome in everyone to Rock Rants episode, what is this, 5? Something like that? It's around that area. I'm Ryan with
Smiggy.
And today we're going to be talking about System of a Down's Mesmerize. So we try to do new albums that come out, but every now and then we just want to throw in ones that we like. And I really, really like this album. Turns out when Smigs was listening to it, he really, really liked about 3/4 of it because he already had most of it downloaded to your Spotify. So I'm excited to hear your thoughts because you told me a standout song was not one that you thought it would have been. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started with System of a Down. So, for those who don't know, they are an Armenian American heavy metal band formed in California in 1994. This isn't a fact about the band, but System of a Down is actually who introduced me to the country of Armenia. When I was, early middle school listening to these guys, I had never heard of Armenia before. I know that sounds bad, but yeah, I mean, it's just, I guess, something we didn't talk about in school. So yeah, I looked up what's the story on Armenia. Got to learn more about the country itself, about the genocide, which is what they sing about on a lot of their songs, just to bring awareness to it. But yeah, they are either their families are Armenian or they immigrated here from Armenia. But they all met in California and formed and recorded and everything there. System of a Down's been nominated for 4 Grammy Awards, and they won for the song BYOB. Other than 2 new songs in 2020 to raise money and awareness for a conflict happening in Armenia, they have not released any new material since 2005. So that was their last album they released was Hypnotized, which is the one that comes out directly after the album we're discussing today. And then, yeah, they regrouped in 2020 to release 2 new songs. They were great. They still got it. Everyone was hoping for another album after that, but here we are in 2025. Still hasn't happened. So let's get into talking about the music. Smigs, what do you think about this album overall? You can just say in general, you can compare it to other System of a Down albums. Just what are your overall general impressions?
So this band formed the year that you were born.
Yeah.
Is what I just learned. I knew they were old. And yes, they are old. Again, if you've ever been sitting in the car and your dad, your grandpa, your great-grandpa, somebody that was alive for the Great Depression really is playing something, you're like, wow, this is... I wish they weren't playing this because you're still into pop music or whatever's on the radio or whatever. There is a high chance that it was like Aerials or Chop Suey or something like that. Because as much as we don't want to admit it, I don't want to admit it, this is officially dad rock. And as much as my lovely co-host would maybe want to defend that, he's a father. So, look, by definition, it's dad rock.
It is dad rock, but the stuff that we grew up calling dad rock, like Guns N' Roses and stuff, that's now grandpa rock. So just throwing that out there. This is dad rock.
I've said this a few times, but I went to see Guns N' Roses live a few years ago with my own dad. So to prove that point, and I gotta, man, so I've seen a few bands live. I'll actually get back to the point here in a second, but I've gone to see a few bands live, namely Metallica and Guns N' Roses, because they're of the similar era, similar age, all of that. Metallica, who I most recently just saw at Raymond James Stadium down in Tampa, puts on the most electric show you could imagine still. I've seen them, I think, 3 times now, and they bring the fire, literally, too, sometimes, pyrotechnics, all that. But they're banging on the drums. Lars is going at it. James Hetfield still got that, ooh, yeah. He's still got it all in his voice. And they didn't do, like, as much talking in between and stuff in Tampa because it's hot as hell. But Guns N' Roses, Axl sounds like he's on his lyrical deathbed. The thing that I think keeps System of a Down so fresh, and even Serj Tankian to his own... side, I don't even want to say side projects, but I guess solo music, is he's never really, like, they do the occasional yelling, screaming, all of that, but he just has such a unique voice, and so does Darren, that they don't have a voice that is necessarily going to age poorly no matter what. So as long as they can still play instruments and all of that, it feels like they can rock out for as long as they want, to be honest.
You brought up a good point. These metalcore bands that scream a lot, I always wonder, are they going to be doing tours when they're 70 years old? Like we see Paul McCartney, the Rolling Stones, all these reunion tours. Like, what happens when I don't know. They've softened up over the years. But what happens when Bring Me the Horizon, like it's
Oh
2050,
my God.
and they're back on tour. But anyway, go on.
That's what I've been on a huge All That Remains kick over the last few months, and but that exactly, like, even that guy, he still sounds great. I honestly don't know the lead singer's name, so shame on me, but even he is sounding different. We talked about it with Matt Shadows of Avenged Sevenfold. He's had surgery, he's had, like cysts or blisters or whatever on his vocal cords. You can't bring that for that long with that kind of stuff. But it is, when a System of a Down song is coming on the radio, again, because they have so many hits. Aerials, Chop Suey, I've already named a few, BYOB, a bunch that I didn't even realize were from this album, like BYOB, like Cigarro, Radio Video, Violent Pornography, even Old School Hollywood, which, to jump ahead of myself, is actually going to be the song that I don't necessarily even want to say disappoints me the most, because it's still
the weakest.
Yeah, and it might even be because I don't necessarily understand what message they're trying to go for, because for anybody who doesn't know, as Ryan already alluded to, System of a Down is a bit of a political band, or they talk about, all that kind of stuff. For example, BYOB, why don't presidents fight the war? Why do they always send the poor?
Great line.
Right. And also, I'll be honest, if I was a president, I probably wouldn't want to fight a war either. So, but regardless, the album as a whole, like Ryan said, System of a Down is in my probably like top 10, 15 favorite bands, but I go on like kicks of listening to them and not listening to them. I almost have to kind of like be in a mood of listening to them, but at no point do I think they're bad. When I came to this album, because I don't know what songs are on what albums for them, I had almost 3/4, if not more, of the album already on my Spotify playlist. So the album as a whole, absolute bangers, absolutely top to bottom, incredible. Now, I think you said we were going to get into this a little bit later, but it's something that I did not know. So the very first song on this album is Soldier Side Intro. So Soldier Side is a different song by, I almost said Avenged Sevenfold, by System of a Down, apparently on a whole different album. Why?
So let's go ahead and get into one of the facts, because that is one of the facts on here, is that Mesmerized and Hypnotize were recorded and released as a double album. So if you listen to the album Mesmerize and listen to Hypnotize, those songs were written and recorded at the same time. Mesmerize, I think, was released in May of 2005. Hypnotize was released in November. So these two albums are basically supposed to be listened to together. So Mesmerize starts with the Soldier Side intro, and when you listen to the next album, Hypnotize, it ends with the song Soldier Side. So you got the intro, and then you have the conclusion of these two albums. When you listen to them back to back, it sounds really, really good. I think, like, to me, that's my preferred way of listening to it, is if you listen to the song Soldier Side, you gotta kind of listen to the intro first.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that it wasn't just like, I don't know what else it could have possibly been. I guess that obviously does make the most sense, but I was like, because I listened to it probably like 3 or 4 times full through, because it's only like a 40-minute album. It's honestly not that long. But I saw that, and obviously you hear the guitar, and it's very distinct because it's one of their lower tempoed songs. And I was like, where's song at? Okay, so that makes sense. So I'm gonna jump right in to the song that I thought, I don't even necessarily want to say that it's my favorite song on the album, but it's a song that I don't know that realistically I've maybe never even listened to, and if I have, I definitely just kind of threw it by the wayside before. But I also wrote down some lyrics to it as well. So the song is Bad Statue, right? Sad Statue. Jesus, already got it wrong. So the lyrics are, you and I will all go down in history with a sad statue of liberty and a generation that didn't agree. So maybe not as intricate as analogical, which is definitely not a word, as they tend to be. They usually a bit more clever with the way that they use their metaphors and whatnot. But I think that's pretty apt to our generation as a whole, because I don't know, wherever you fall on political spectrum, and I guess this will turn just by proxy a little bit political, because System of a Down does talk about a lot of that stuff. Exactly. It's pretty apt to our generation. No matter what side of the scale you fall on, you tend to vehemently disagree with the other. It's no longer, blue versus red. It's no longer Democrats versus Republicans. Hell, sometimes it's not even, it's Republicans versus Trumpers and all that stuff. So, but a lot of what you'll see from our generation is, of course, fighting for human rights, fighting for women's rights, fighting for, gay people's rights, trans rights, all of that. And while that has always been an issue going on, I thought those very simple lyrics kind of hit really hard the first time I heard them, because it was like, yeah. Well, yeah, I know we tend to fall pretty much on the same side of politics and whatnot, and I'm sure that what is currently going on with the regime of our country is, well, we have a sad Statue of Liberty, and we have a generation that doesn't agree. So this song is amazing for the lyrics, but also it opens up with a pretty sweet guitar riff, I'll be honest. It's just that quick, and it's like they just hit all the right notes, because System of a Down is another one of those bands to me that doesn't always necessarily use the guitars to shine, but they're there and they're always good.
So what you said about with current things going on, it's kind of what I like about them is if you like their music, I consider them timeless, because to me, there's no other band that sounds like System of a Down. When you listen to their lyrics, they can be the goofiest thing you've ever heard, or they can be really serious. When the protests were going on for like in 2020, Black Lives Matter and things like that, you saw police brutality and that sort of thing. If you go on to their album Toxicity and listen to the lyrics of Deer Dance, the lyrics fit perfect with what was going on in the year 2020. And this album was written in 2005 or came out in 2005. And just like you said, there are lyrics that are applicable to 2025 right now. So that's just one of the things that I really like about them is they write their lyrics vague enough that it can always apply to, or not always, but it can apply to things that happen later on in the future. It's funny that you brought up Sad Statue, because aside from the ones like BYOB or Question or things like that a lot of people have heard already, Sad Statue is also my favorite on that album.
Okay.
It's just so good. I love their harmonies. I love the split parts between both their vocals. Like you said, I think that Darren, he is my all-time favorite guitar player. I think no one else sounds like him. Little throwback to last week's episode about Linkin Park. They have a song called Rebellion. When I first heard that song, I was like, they really brought out their inner System of a Down with the guitar work in this. Yeah. Then I went home and looked it up and realized he wrote and recorded the guitar for them for that song. So I'm like, I just think he's so unique. And really distinct with his guitar riffs. And yeah, he's basically the reason that I still play guitar. When I first got a guitar from my brother and I was trying to learn all these different songs, I'm like, I'm going to try to learn some System of a Down, because they were a favorite back then as well. And yeah, I mean, that's what kept me playing.
I mean, you see it from... Again, I'll admit that I don't always know the ins and outs of some of these bands. System of a Down is definitely one of them, even though I listen to a ton of their music. But you can tell that part of what makes them so special, specifically Darren and Serj, is, I mean, it just in the nicest way you can say it, is they're both freaks. They're not afraid to let their freak flag fly. They're just big weirdos. They're giant weirdos. And it comes out in their music, it comes out in their lyrics. And Darren, you just have to listen to his voice, honestly, and you can kind of tell that he's a bit out there. But I mean, it's what makes them so good is because it allows them to not have any inhibitions with the way that they go about their creativity. Because even if their lyrics are, rather politically charged or current events, whatever you want to call it, there's a ton of other bands out there like that. Rise Against, for example, is one of them, who I also do like, but Rise Against doesn't always know how to put thoughts onto paper musically. I think they do a really good job of expressing their feelings on certain matters as a whole, but not in a way that you care to digest as music. It just almost sounds, I don't even necessarily want to say preachy, but it is the word I'm going to use. Whereas System of a Down finds a way to do it where you can listen to it and get the message of what they're saying and learn honestly about some things that maybe you didn't even know about. Why don't you ask the kids of Tiananmen Square? Things like that, which of course that's a big one, but but they also do it in a way where if you just kind of want to tune that out and listen to music for the sake of music, they have amazing instrumentals. Like you said, Darren has a voice that you don't really hear anywhere else, because realistically, it's not a good voice for singing. It's not a traditionally good singing voice, is what I should say. Yeah. But it's not like chalkboard screeching or anything. It still draws you in. And especially if you watch music videos, one I'd point to specifically is Chop Suey, which I know is one of their most famous songs. But if you just watch the way that Serj and Darren play off of each other in that music video, it's just, they just don't give a shit what other people think of them. And I think that allows them to express such freedom in their music.
It's true. And I know you said you haven't got to listen to it yet, but Darren's other band, called Darren Malakian and Scars on Broadway, used to just be called Scars on Broadway. They came out with a new album on Friday, I think, this past Friday. So like 3 days ago, Darren put out brand new music. You should give it a listen when you get the chance, because when you said he just really doesn't care what people think or trying to go for what's going to get him played on the radio, some of the lyrics are wild. They are out there. Some of them have a political message. Some of them are just like, what am I even listening to right now? I think it'll be a fun album for us to review as well. But yeah, he really doesn't care. And I do. I think he's a genius. There's some things. I'm going to read a couple passages later on from Serj's book.
Oh my God. Wait, what was the title of that again?
It's called Down with the System.
Down with the System. That's what I thought. That's so simple but so clever.
So I'm not always a fan of how he goes about the collaborative process, which we'll see a little bit. But I can't deny, like, the guy is so talented. Him and Serj both are. His, like, Darren's not solo stuff, but his other band is good. Serj's solo projects and other collaborations you've done are also really good. I enjoy them, but there's no denying that when those two work together, that's when they're at their best.
Dude,
those
just
guys play off each other so
unique.
well. Yeah.
And I just thought of some more lyrics that I think really, really kind of culminate what System of a Down really is, and it's my shit stinks much better than yours. Which is okay, obviously trolling is obvious, but that is the weird difference that you can get with them, is you can go from the first lyrics that I said, which is a sad statue of liberty, a generation that didn't agree, to my cock is much bigger than yours, my cock, or whatever it is. It's just, you will never hear a band that is like them, except for maybe, like you said, the closest thing you can get is Darren Malarkey. Is that his name? Malaki. There we go. Same thing. Obviously would bring some of that funk to himself, and then Serj's solo projects. But you just get such a beautiful mesh of different things. It's literally, it's almost like they don't write down the lyrics to half of the songs that they want to write. It's like they're just out there freestyling with it. It's like they just get on the drums, get on the guitar, and find that rhythm out first, and then those two just kind of like, all right, what can we say now? And which is obviously not how they do it, but it comes off like that, which almost gives it a more beautiful sheen to me, anyway.
And the fact that they have lyrics like that, and like we mentioned, Sad Statue, and how they talk about political messages, things that they believe, but also on the same album, the other, man, I said Sad Statue is my favorite. This might take first place. They have a song on there called Question. And if anyone has heard that song, it's just them like talking, like, to me anyway, because they always say the lyrics are open to interpretation. If you watch interviews, they'll say, what's this song about? And they might say, well, I wrote it for this reason, but whatever the listener gets, that's what the song's about. Question, it seems to me like he's literally just questioning the afterlife. What happens when we die? I think it's like a hauntingly beautiful song. The acoustic intro, the odd time signatures, it's just, that song is chef's kiss. Based on your face, though, I'm going to say you didn't enjoy it, did you?
Okay, so I wouldn't say that I didn't enjoy it. I just think on an album that has so many 8 and 9s out of 10s, you get to this song, and it's... What is the kindest way to make you not unfriend me on Facebook here?
No, we can fight. This might be our first big fight.
I don't... No, I'll start by saying this, and it's that I didn't necessarily get into the lyrics of this song super heavily, so I don't understand the messaging quite as heavily, so maybe that would change my mind. But I think the way the instrumentals carry the song is what I'm trying to say, at least
so
for what So yeah, it's mostly because I think like the way that they kind of switch up the tone from, the just, I don't know, it just didn't quite hit for me, because it goes to that hard opening guitar riff, and then you go to just Serj kind of hitting that melodic singing, and then you get both of them on the duet. It's like, it's
You're describing everything I love.
Yeah. And like, to me, that's all elements that I think should be really good, and in theory that's what I like about a lot of songs. But there's just something about this one in particular that I think it might honestly just be victim of the fact that songs like BYOB, and honestly maybe ironically enough my favorite song on this album being This Cocaine Makes Me Feel Like I'm on This Song, because not that I've ever done cocaine, but I would imagine if you're just like ripping lines in the club or something, that they just go crazy on this one. They just jam out on this one. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And he sounds like he has like a stutter to his lyrics, even though he's just like he's like chopping up all of his lyrics very quickly. And again, I'm more of a fan of like thrash metal and like things that make me go crazy and get, not that I want to be in the pit, but get in the pit. And Question just doesn't really do that for me.
That's fair. Yeah. I mean, now that you're explaining like the reasons why, I get it. That one to me, that just hits. It's great. I want to ask you a question though. Have you ever had songs or an album or a band that you listen to and it immediately puts you back to a certain place in time? So for example, I know somebody, I don't want to name this person in case you're like, don't talk about me on your podcast, but they said whenever they hear the band Skillet, it takes them back to Zoo Tycoon because for whatever reason, they would listen to Skillet all the time while they were playing Zoo Tycoon. So over a decade later, if they hear an old Skillet song, they're like, okay, I'm back in my computer playing video games. Has something like that ever happened for you?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be named on this podcast if I was listening to Skillet either.
Skillet later, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, so I actually have two that immediately come to mind. One's not even a rock album, but the first one is Ludacris's Chicken and Beer. As a young, like, God, when would that have even come out? Probably when I was like 12 or something like that. Mm-hmm. So it's not even like I was living the lyrics or the themes of that album, because it's a rap album. I'm a young white man in a middle class family and all that. You know, it's not even necessarily meant for me, but it just reminds me of times of like specifically playing Super Mario Sunshine in my old bedroom, sweating my nuts off because we didn't have air conditioning that summer. I don't know, that just boom, like you said,
so
I can remember the old songs. Yeah. I just remember like this old clock radio that I had that had like a little CD thing on the top. But the other one is City of Evil, Avenged Sevenfold, because that came out in like 05 or something like that, 06
I think the same year as this one.
There you go. So, and that one just takes me, because I remember because Bad Country is what got me into that band, obviously being off of that album. And strangely enough, that song was on like a Madden game, an NFL Madden game, because that's when they still put like rock songs and stuff on there. So because I didn't get into rock and metal until high school, and then more so in college, and obviously growing into it. But I can vividly remember being in my friend's basement, just playing whatever games at the time we were doing, and just having City of Evil on. We both like found that album through the Madden game, and then both started liking Avenged Sevenfold together, and then got into more bands like System of a Down was actually a pretty big one. So what's called a Bad Country again? Damn, City of Evil. My brain is so fried today. For anybody who plays sports, I am 32. If I look fried today and I sound fried, that is normal. That is so normal. But I have played about 11 games in 9 days, and wires are not even crossed anymore. They're just disconnected. So this is going to be a huge Ryan Carey episode, and it's probably what people are begging for. But City of Evil and Ludacris's Chicken and Beer, vividly remember where I was for those albums. But it sounds like you have one for you as well.
I do. And would it be weird if I said when I hear old school Hollywood that I'm transported to Disney World? Is that weird?
Strangely enough, yeah.
Because my family, we always tried to take summer vacations when I was a kid. And for 2-3 years in a row, we would try to go somewhere closer, you know, not really a staycation, but, you know, a couple hours drive away and do something like that. And then when my family saved up enough, we would try to do something like Disney World. 2005 happened to be when we went to Disney World. And we flew that year. So before we went and we were getting ready for vacation is when I picked up this album. And if anyone listened to last week's album, funny enough, or last week's episode, I told you I grew up kind of in a stricter household where certain things weren't allowed. I was allowed to buy this album.
with a
But
song called Violent Pornography on it.
the catch is I could buy any album that I wanted as a kid, but I had to buy it from Walmart because Walmart had edited CDs. I couldn't get it from FYE or Target or anything else. So when I first heard this song, all of the bad language was taken out. But anyway, that's a side note. I got this and brought it on the plane with me, and I listened to it over and over again on the way to Disney World, on our way back. And let me tell you, when my parents told me that we were going to a place called Hollywood Studios, and this album has Old School Hollywood and Lost in Hollywood, I hear it used to be Lost in Hollywood too, not so much anymore. But to this day, if I hear Old School Hollywood, I'm back in Disney World. I'm back on the plane, heading to Florida.
It turns out Jack Delory's not even 10 feet tall. Okay, hold on. I have a question now because edited versions of songs kind of almost tend to be almost like kids bop versions, still a little bit nastier than that. But with songs like Cigarro and This Cocaine Makes Me Feel Like I'm on This Song and the general vibe of System of a Down, what does an edited album by them even sound like?
Well, Cigarro was no fun to listen to because, I mean,
it's the whole song.
They don't do so I didn't know until probably 2 years ago that there's a Beastie Boys song. Check it out. Check it out. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, Ryan. Yes. Oh my God.
They have an edited and an explicit version of that song. I didn't know an explicit version existed until about a year ago, because instead of just taking out the bad language, they put new words in place. And that was the only one I'd ever heard. So it was like a year ago. It came on Spotify and I was like, I had no idea this version existed. But anyway, System of a Down does not do that. It just takes out the bad words. And I'll say in Violent Pornography, they also edited out the words choking. So when they say choking chicks, and they edited out the word sodomy. So
sodomy.
They're
such a pleasant tone.
That song was basically just, fill in the blank. There's lots of missing stuff from this one. So it was interesting. But yeah. System of a Down takes me back to Disney World. Now, real quick, before we get back to Beastie Boys or, edited things, there's actually a story behind Old School Hollywood. So Darren gave an interview and he was talking about that song. And this is what he said about it. He actually got to play in 2003. He's a big sports fan, apparently. And he's a Dodgers fan when it comes to baseball. So he got to play in the Los Angeles Dodgers annual Hollywood Stars exhibition game. Or I guess it's where they get celebrities and have them, come play baseball or something. I don't know. As much as I love baseball, I don't get into the extra stuff. But this is what he said. That was a day I spent playing baseball with Tony Danza and Frankie Avalon, who were mentioned in the song. He explained to Revolver, which is where this interview came from. I came home and I was so shocked by the situation I was just in. It was surreal. But it was a dream that wasn't a happy dream. It was kind of dark, he laughed. I wouldn't say it was a nightmare, but it was weird. I came home, took a shower, and eventually picked up a guitar, and that song came out of me. I didn't even know that it was going to come out. It's a cool track. I think it's a really different thing for System musically. So that song was literally just his experience playing celebrity baseball in 2003.
That makes so much sense because that's why it was like my quote unquote worst song, even though I don't really think it's bad, because it's just like Tony Danza cuts in line. It's like I don't know what the fuck you're trying to say to me, bro. Yeah, washed up, like it's a fun song to listen to, but I was like, what the hell am I listening to? Like, what does that? Jack Delory's 10 feet tall. Bet he's not. Cool lyrics, so I don't know what the fuck it means. But if it's just a literal story of him playing baseball, I guess that obviously makes sense. But that is definitely one where you kind of have to know that to make sense of the song.
This podcast is so fun as well because, I mean, I'll look up like band members and stuff like that or how long they've been around. I don't just sit there and search for facts about bands no matter how much I like them. System of a Down is my number one band of all time. I had no clue about this until today when I was looking up what's some stuff we can talk about besides just the songs when it comes to Mesmerize. And I stumbled across that. So, yeah, no message. Just he got to play a game of baseball and it was really weird. He said something about all of the other stars there being very egocentric. So almost like a don't meet your heroes kind of thing. And these guys probably weren't even his heroes. They were just celebrities he knew about, people, acting like big shots. So yeah, that's why that song was written.
That's crazy too, because obviously like, people like Tony Danza, like there's levels to stardom too. but like if you're Darren Malachi, and yes, I know that's not his name, that's what I'm gonna keep calling him. If you're Darren, like you are still System of a Down. You're one of like the two most well-known members of System of a Down. Obviously, Serj probably being the number one there, but like it's not like you're not famous. You're just not superstardom famous. So I don't know. I mean, on a much smaller scale, we kind of dealt with that in streaming a little bit when people would like gain their first little bit of notoriety or popularity. You act like your shit don't stink, or like I don't know. You try to act like this omnipresent being for people to follow rather than like enjoy. And I never understood that. Like, yes, the goal is to get famous and want people to like you and listen to your media, your music in this case, or I guess in their case is like acting and stuff. But like, you're at the end of the day, you're another human being. Like we all put our pants on, screaming on fire, 2 legs at a time. It doesn't. My point is I never understood that, but that's more of a personal gripe than anything. And for stars to do that to each other, it's just like slapping your dicks on the table when you all have massive lap hogs. It's just like nobody cares that you guys are fighting about this. Just go have, this is like your chance to have fun with other people of your notoriety. So why not just go do that? But if it brought that song, it brought a good experience for him. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. While we're on the topic of Hollywood, do you like the song Lost in Hollywood? Because while System is known for their more crazy, chaotic, fast-paced songs, this one's not. So did you enjoy Lost in Hollywood? Because for me personally, it's one of my favorites. You don't like it, do you? I can tell.
I'll be honest. I was fighting in my head for 2 songs that were going to take the bottom spot here. And it was Old School Hollywood ended up taking it. Yeah, maybe I'm just not a fan of Hollywood.
Fair.
But again, I think I Old School Hollywood was because I just didn't necessarily understand. Now again, I have that story, and I still think it's a bit silly because it's just like a weird personal experience. But you're allowed to write songs about whatever. That's the whole point. But it just doesn't make any neurons click. It's just a fun song for the sake of being a fun song, so that's fine. But a lot of System of a Down songs just hit way harder and have meaning to them, so it's hard to crack into that upper echelon for them. Lost in Hollywood, like you said, is much slower, and I don't think it's that I dislike Darren's voice, but I definitely like when Serj is the one that's kind of taking over the vocals. And this is a slower, more melodic song. You hear Darren a lot more. The guitars aren't ripping and anything like that. So I don't think necessarily it's a bad song, but it is for sure bottom 2, if not bottom 1 for me on the album.
Okay. Yeah, I do like it because even though Darren does sing lead, I do like Serj's parts in the background that he has. I'm not going to sing, but his ahs that he does back there during the slower bit. I think, again, if there's one thing about Darren, like his guitar work, I know I've said it already in this episode, it's fantastic. I think the way that he writes riffs is totally unique. But yeah, I like it for those reasons, and I think it's a nice close, like end to the album. It would be weird having like BYOB and This Cocaine and Sad Statue, all these like really fast-paced songs, and putting Lost in Hollywood right there in the middle. That'd be strange. Yeah, that would have been really weird. I like it as a closer.
Yeah, that's fair. I get like you do have to have the variety on there and everything. And as I'm looking at this, it is actually, it's actually like right in the middle, but it's somewhere in the middle of like the most streamed songs on here. It has like 157 million. And
Lost in Hollywood does?
Yeah, and like there's a few of them that float around like 150 to like 250. The most streamed one obviously being BYOB. It's one of their most favorite songs, period, from my understanding. And that one's at like 722 million. So it does fall right kind of into the middle there with the rest of the absolute bangers. So I'm not shocked to hear that it's a popular song or even one of your favorites personally. But I don't know. I don't know. It just maybe didn't hit for me all the same reasons it did for you. And again, I tend to like the harder things, the thrash, the rip the guitars. I honestly half the time don't even need good lyrics. Just make it sound good to me. And I don't know. Yeah. It just wasn't the style for me.
Would you like to hear why Darren took the lead a lot more on this album?
I would.
You can say no. It's fine. No. All right. let's go ahead and break into the book. I'm not going to read everything, obviously, because Serj would probably sue me for just doing an audiobook of his. But there are a few paragraphs that I wanted to read from this. So basically, the recording of these two albums started in 2003. They had already done their self-titled album, Toxicity, and Steal This Album. By this point, Serj did not even want to make these last two albums. He was done with System of a Down basically before the recording of this started, which shocked a lot of people. Like, oh, why didn't he want to do it? Here's why. In between and before they started recording, he started working with other artists and kind of experimenting with his own solo stuff. Have you ever heard of Buckethead?
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah,
He
so
literally
did
with a bucket on his head. It's hilarious.
Yeah, he did a lot of work and things with Buckethead. System of a Down, because they blew up so fast. I mean, think about how popular they were by their second album, and they were huge. That's a quick takeoff for a band.
Oh my God, yeah.
I would say that while Serj was more passionate about the music and the message, the other three members seemed more on wanting to keep that popularity and making sure that they do things the right way to keep listeners in. So I think it's just a difference between Serj was like, I want to make the music that I want to make, even if it's not popular, sort of thing. But here's what he said. When it came time to start working on new material for another System of a Down album in late 2003, my head and my heart weren't fully in it. At the time we started writing, my relationship with my ex-girlfriend had completely cratered, and I was grieving that loss. I'd been so deeply in love with her and thought this relationship was going to be for keeps. When it turned out that it wasn't, I sank into a deep depression. I lost a lot of weight, and I didn't really want to leave the house much. In some ways, though, I welcomed the idea of going into the rehearsal space with Darren, Chavo, and John because it gave me something to do other than sit around stewing about the demise of this relationship. So we had a long-term relationship that he was in. Things did not go well, and it very clearly took a heavy toll on him when he talks about losing weight and just not being in the headspace to record.
He's a stick figure to begin with, so that's scary.
He is. He's a slim guy, but he even had that little bit of hope, though, like, okay, maybe hanging out with my friends will help me. It didn't help. The practice space didn't turn out to be the haven I'd hoped it would be. Having worked with other artists in the interim, I'd seen other ways of making music than the way we'd done it in System. I was writing songs and I was desperate to collaborate, to be creative, but everything within the band felt rigid and inflexible. No one wanted to change anything or even experiment with it. As we started working out of North Hollywood practice space, most of the songs we spent time on were ones Darren had written. The music I brought in was shuffled to the side. If I mentioned that I had a song I wanted us to take a crack at, Darren would never outright refuse, but it was always, let's work on that one next week, or how about we finish up this batch of songs first? We rarely ever seemed to get to my songs. So he was very frustrated. Earlier in the book, he talks about meditation really helping him in getting through things, and he mistook meditation and being Zen for always being passive, which he realizes now he can't do. He's got to stick up for himself, but at this time, anything that bothered him, like his songs getting pushed to the side, he would brush off, shrug, whatever.
Yeah.
We'll just go along with it. So there's a little bit more, but do you think maybe that you could tell that reflected in the album without even knowing about the problems behind the scenes?
I have a few questions for you because you're more of an avid listener, but I would say through the album, I wouldn't have necessarily pegged that, but I guess it kind of makes sense just by the simple answer being that Darren does take lead on a lot more vocals, or at least is like more pronounced as the backup on a lot of songs too. So you can tell that he has a massive influence. But my question to you would be two things. One, are you shocked by that? Because it seems like him and Darren, as I kind of said at the beginning of the episode, are the same kind of freak. Maybe Serj is a bit more serious, and it kind of makes sense what you said, where like he wants to make the music that he wants to make and what he likes and enjoys rather than just what's popular, whereas I guess kind of see Darren being the other way. But is it shocking to you that those two weren't necessarily on the same page? And actually my second question was going to be, why did Serj leave? But you kind of already answered that.
Yeah, so I don't know, because it's hard to say, because it's all about what you hear. Oh, I heard Serj say this, Darren said this, in the book it goes into this. In one interview, I mean, you get it. He says in the book that Darren was very much interested in being a successful rock star. when they reached their popularity and they were doing stadium tours and everything, in Darren's eyes, they made it. Like he reached his goal. This is what he wanted to achieve, and that's what he wanted to keep. Serj, on the other hand, as long as he got his message out there and he could release his own creativity in the way he wanted to, that's what made him happy. Doing the exact same process all the time in the studio and saying we need to have a song like this and lyrics that say that, he was just unhappy. It wasn't, to him, it wasn't being creative anymore. I'm not really shocked, especially after hearing the songs. And there are songs on Hypnotize, like She's Like Heroin. That's a Scars on Broadway song. That is just straight up, if you listen to Scars on Broadway and then you listen to She's Like Heroin, Darren's the only one that I'm assuming had say in that song. So yeah, I can see it. He goes on to say that while they were recording these albums, he told the band he was going to quit. He said, these last 2 albums are it for me. I'll tour with you, like do the touring cycle after the albums come out, but I'm done. He said that everyone seemed to understand. And this is the last thing I'm going to read from the book. But he says, in the short term, I hope that by making it clear how unhappy I was in the band, Darren might be more willing to cede some creative control to allow a more egalitarian ethos to take hold. I thought he might reflect on what was making me so miserable and try to alleviate it. In fact, the opposite was true. It seemed to me that Darren felt the band was falling apart, so he gripped the reins even more tightly to bring it under control. As I sensed that happening, I totally disengaged. I was physically present at those sessions, but not spiritually.
Okay, so another question for you, which I guess is just kind of like a rewording of my first question. What do you think to Darren meant staying popular? Because it's not like System of a Down, they're not a Metallica, they're not a Nine Inch Nails, they're not a Guns N' Roses. Pick any of these bands that are much more traditional in their lyrics about, sex, drugs, rock and roll. They have always been a bit of an outlier. While mega popular, they've always been kind of an outlier in terms of their style. Again, they're more political. They're both a bit insane in the membrane. They've always kind of had that different feel to them, at least from the outside looking in, as somebody that doesn't listen to them a ton. So does that not shock you that those two weren't able to work that out, that Darren wasn't able to kind of see what was happening there? And second, how do you think their drummer being a trumper plays into this?
Okay, so let's get to the first part first.
Yeah.
I think Darren has a symptom of, well, you and I, we used to stream. We're familiar with people who are like popular YouTubers. I've watched people talk about, algorithms and so on and so forth. You see a lot of YouTubers. I'm just going to use this as an example, who gain popularity doing what they like. Maybe even a video that they don't think is going to take off is what puts them into the spotlight. And once you get those subscribers, once you get those views, maybe instead of doing what you want to do, you do what you think your audience wants. I think maybe Darren was in that headspace. Nothing about them should work. They're all talented musicians. Serj even says when he writes lyrics, sometimes he's just scribbling stuff down. Sometimes it is goofy stuff, like
and
we
you
talked
can
about.
tell.
Sometimes it is serious. Chop Suey, it has an acoustic intro. It has a chorus talking about suicide, mentioned suicide and angels deserving to die. And the verse is so fast. Nothing about that song should have been a hit, but it was. I think.
Why did he leave his keys up on the table?
I don't, because he wanted to, I guess. But, I think maybe Darren was just trying to keep hold of that. Instead of doing what they had always been doing, he tried to take all the control to make sure that they stayed where they were, if that makes sense. That's just a theory. I have no clue. The second part about him being a Trump supporter. It is strange because you think about their songs, a lot of it seems more left-leaning when we think about, some of the other lyrics that they've had. But really, I don't know. It's tough because Serj has even said that John is Serj's brother-in-law, by the way. So they are related,
Extra fun.
By marriage. He's even said that when it comes to Armenian politics and social issues, the 4 of them all agree on those sides of things. But for some reason, John is a Trump supporter, and as far as I know, the other 3 are not. I think Serj came out and supported Bernie Sanders during the previous election cycle.
That just makes so much sense.
So I don't know. I can't really speak for him. You hear about people who are like, "Oh, I'm socially liberal but financially conservative." I don't know. Maybe there's one thing about Trump that their drummer really likes, but it is
Yeah, I guess
strange
so.
to be in a band like System of a Down with
Right.
their what people would consider more leftist ideas, I guess.
And that's
It was
exactly
almost
why I asked this question, because like political bands, again, the other prime example being Rise Against, or I guess Rage Against the Machine too. Like literally the name Rage Against the Machine. Those tend to be more left leaning or even centrist, whatever. But you don't hear too many political bands that are, pro Republican. Not even as far as like, because I think Republicans and Trumpers are very, very different people. But you,
Yeah,
even
I
to the
agree.
effect, you definitely don't hear political bands that are like the MAGA heads, but you don't even hear political bands that are even close to being right wing necessarily. So, and like you just said, for a band like this to even have one member of them that supports that feels, and whatever, however you fall on the political spectrum is your world, but it feels very strange to even have one of them be on that side.
I agree. I mean, it will be something I'd be interested to hear him talk more about if he hasn't. Maybe he's been on some podcast where he's talked about his political views and why it is. And again, we can get political on this podcast, but just throwing out some ideas. System of a Down's very anti-war. And even though a lot of people might not buy it, Trump also campaigned on, I didn't start any new wars during my first administration. I'm not going to now. It could be something like that. It could be, I mean, obviously we see the problems going on with, and problems is putting it lightly, with ICE, but it could be about border security. I honestly have no clue. I have no idea. I'm just trying to come up with something for what would change his
Meanwhile, we're
political
the closest to
early
World War
2000s.
III that we have ever been. I don't know. I don't know. We'll get back to System of a Down here in a second, but Republicans, fine. If you're a Trumper, go to hell. I'll be honest with you. So if you're a Trumper, don't listen to our podcast. Eat shit. Well, it's just the idea that, again, if we're tying System of a Down back into this, very anti-war, very anti this, anti that, anti the machine, it's like you're just not, for a band that is so, and I can't even say band if it's just the drummer, for a drummer that's in a band that is so ear to the streets on things like that, to just kind of miss the mark so heavily. I don't know, like, obviously when I asked that question, it was meant to be like a little bit of a funny curveball, but it's a real thought, because like bands like this put a lot of thought into things like that. And again, if he feels like he's doing the right thing, then that's, an answer in and of itself. But I don't know, it just felt weird to me.
I'm curious what family dinners are like, between, or even conversations between Serj and John.
Well, that's what I was, because back when we talked about Avenged Sevenfold, Matt Shadows and Sinister Gates are also brothers-in-law. So nice. I immediately, whenever we talked about this, because I messaged you, I don't even know, it was probably like 2 weeks ago before we even knew that we were going to do this album. And I was like, is this real? And you're like, oh yeah, I'm sure it's not like a great thing. Plus they're brothers-in-law. That was like the first thing I thought of. I was like, if you're bandmates, I'm sure, brother-in-law or tight friends, this, that, the other is not uncommon, obviously, because you just spend so much time together. It's like you spend 8 hours a day at work, you start fucking your coworkers. Regardless, don't do that. I did that. Ended up terribly for me. But man, I guess I did that twice, because I guess Twitch was also a coworker. Anyway, but I immediately thought to Mad Shadows and Sinister Gates, because like I'm sure those family dinners are great. Like you just get to, you probably don't talk too much about music, because that's what you do the rest of the time, but like each other to the core. Whereas like you sit down for Thanksgiving dinner as those two, and especially as Serj, now that I'm learning that he was like not necessarily outcast from the band, but felt that he was a bit of the black sheep of the band, which is also wild to me, because I always would have thought that he was the creative mind of the band. Darren makes sense too, but man.
Yeah. I guess what it boils down to is I went to a Comic-Con last year. This is bear with me. I have a train of thought with this. I went to a Comic-Con, and they have panels where you can just go in and listen to certain people who agree to it speak, and sometimes they do a Q&A. And I went to one with wrestling legend Mick Foley, Mankind, Cactus
Jack, Dude Love. Yeah. Come on.
It was him and a couple other wrestlers, but point being, somebody actually asked him, because he's very left-leaning, critical of Trump and the current administration and so on and so forth. to where the Undertaker is the opposite. He is a very like strong Trump supporter. He might have even had Donald Trump on his podcast, if I remember right, like the Undertaker did. But Mick
sense.
Foley and the Undertaker are great friends. I mean, they have been best buds for a while. And they asked him, and he said that he's not going to let politics come in between a 30-year friendship, is basically what he said. So when it comes to John, maybe that's all it is. He's not going to let politics come between a lifelong, or not lifelong, but a very long friend and now brother-in-law. So it could be something like that.
And I mean, again, you shouldn't necessarily let politics. I know in this day and age, everything is A or B. There's no in between. You have to move the needle to one extreme or the other. And our current political climate is not shy of that. Because like I said, I even differentiate Republicans from Trumpers. They're very different people. It's just, I don't know. It's super weird. And especially, I want to go back to the idea, too, of losing yourself and your band members to the just differing ideas of where you want your band to go to, because even on a much smaller scale through Twitch, right, we had a lovely little team of 4 people, apt named the Stream Team. Again, we've been over this. Yes, we're creative brains, of course we are. But I know that I personally caught some hell from people. Thank God not you, because you were apparently the only one that would ever be fucking honest with me. Where we had a few, all of us, 3 of you anyway, who just wanted to do this, you know, in your off time, have fun with it. If it worked, it worked. But it was more of a escape reality thing. It's COVID, everybody's doing it, this, that, the other. And that's fine. Obviously, do with your journey whatever the hell you want to do, or get to the destination that you want to get to. For me, I was never shy about the idea that I was trying to make this work. Whatever that meant, I was trying to make this work, to the point where I for 90% of the time was doing things that I wanted to do, but it was always in the back of my brain. What is going to get more viewership? How do I need to promote myself on social medias? What different content should I be trying out? Blah, 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 blah. It ended up burning me out, which is half of why I ended up stopping. Mm-hmm. But what I always didn't understand on one end was our other 2 members, one of who I did still like until the end. Unfortunately, he has since passed away. But the other one, who I got to tell you, I'm not a violent man, never thrown a punch in my life. It's on sight if I see that boy. I don't like him. So, but part of why we started to separate, to drift apart, was because he couldn't stop fucking lying about things. Like, he would tell me, yeah, we could try and make this. I'll help with this. When we do our collaborative stuff, we'll do this. And then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, the 3 of us just want to like have some fun. I don't know what the hell he's trying to run this dictatorship for. It's like, this didn't have to separate us if we could have just figured out together. But then on the opposite end, what I always appreciated about you was, if you didn't want to do something, you just wouldn't do it. If you wanted to, or even to the ideas that I would have, even if you didn't necessarily give too much of a shit about them, you still found a way to make them work. And together, because we knew how to fucking communicate as adults, would find a way to make it work for both of our goals, whether it was just to chill for you or me to try and figure out how to turn it into a YouTube video or this, that, the other. So when bands break up or drift apart because of those reasons, to get back to System of a Down, I think it's kind of a shitty cop-out. And not that it's not a real problem, because it is. They say don't, start businesses, start bands with your friends and all of that, because this can happen. But if it's something like that, there's always a way to meld the minds, to mesh the minds, because especially with System of a Down, it's so crazy to me that they were never normal. We've said it 100 times, not to rehash that, but they were never normal. So I would just love to know, in the brain of Darren and Serj, what that creative difference, other than literally saying wanting to do the music you like as opposed to staying popular, because it felt like they were doing both. So I don't like that they kind of drifted apart because of that. And I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but that's pretty much how I feel about it.
Here's my thoughts. As much as I love Darren, because I've talked about it several times already, I think it's his fault from what I've seen. And I'll just say it.
Well, it sounds like.
And here's why. Because I don't have the passage in the book written down, because I didn't expect to talk about it, but I'll summarize the best I can. Darren wanted pretty much full creative control by the end. As Serj pointed out, he would come in with a song that he wrote. Darren's like, well, why don't we just work on that later? Then they would never get around to it, so on and so forth. Serj actually came with a couple propositions. First, he said, this is your guys' dream. We achieved our dream, and I don't want to hold you guys back from it. If you want to get a replacement singer for me, do it. He said, I'll help with the vetting process. He's like, I have some names in mind where if you want to replace me and keep going with System of a Down, let's do it. I guess the guys actually were open to it, and I think auditioned a few people, but they're like, this isn't System without Serj. Fair enough. I respect that.
Yeah.
Then he came to the table and said, here's what I think we should do. Because him and Darren were the main songwriters and Darren was trying to get all of the control, he said, why don't we do it to where on a new album, I get 5 songs, meaning Serj, and you, Darren, get 5 songs. On those 5 songs that I have, I get full creative control. You are allowed to make any suggestion that you want. You can write any guitar part you want and so on and so forth, but I have final say. On your 5 songs, same thing. I can suggest whatever I want, so on and so forth, but you get final say on those 5 songs. It's not like we're going to tell people these 5 were Serj, these 5 were Darren, like it's some kind of competition. But he's like, that way we get even creative control, 50-50 down the board. Darren said no. I think that's more than fair terms, if you ask me. To me, that's a brilliant solution, and if Darren had agreed, who knows how many more albums we could have had.
They should have did like a battle of the bands type thing where like they did that without telling people, and then basically at the end we're like, which one do you like more? But of course that starts way more problems than it actually fixes. But that's man, because even when you said, could you tell that these were gonna be the last 2 albums that Serj was gonna do, I wouldn't have known any different. Obviously, when you pose the question, I can put a few pieces of the puzzle together, but this just sounds like another System of a Down song. Or album, rather. It just sounds like another System album. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to pretend like I've had mega fame or anything like that. Obviously, money changes people's brains and all of that. And holding on to your fleeting moment in the spotlight is surely something that a lot of people in the past and in the future will have done and will do. But like I said, it's a cheap way for me to say it, but I think it's such a shitty cop-out to not be able to work with the people, or specifically the guy who made you so damn famous in the first place.
And that's why it doesn't make sense. If staying famous is his goal, you think he would agree, like, okay, let's do that. Let's whatever it's going to take to keep this band going. So that's why I don't know if it is for popularity. That's just a guess. But then when you think about it from that standpoint, Darren's doing everything he can to like reject Serj's terms about bringing the band back. However,
good.
However, they are touring. I got to see him in 2019, best concert I've ever been to. They're still touring. They're still playing music. They played massive shows in South America. If you haven't seen footage from it, it's insane. People were like lighting off fireworks in the crowd. It was wild. But they said that they're better friends now than they ever have been. They said that all of them get along despite the political differences, despite the creative differences. They're just having fun. They're having fun playing their shows. When the audience is into it, they're into it. It seems to be working out for them. So whatever.
Distance makes the heart grow fonder, I guess.
All I can hope now is that they come back to our area so I can see them again.
Yeah, I guess that's all fair. And again, when you do something, the same thing with the same people for so long, there's always going to be cracks in the foundation for sure. But it just, not to beat the already bludgeoned horse, but it just, especially if you're going for just popularity, how do you not realize that, yes, Darren is probably runaway the second most popular member of that band, but if you did man on the street type things where, you got all these college kids now just holding microphones up to people, asking them for all their opinions, and you were like, who's in System of a Down? I would bet 80 of those 100 people will only be able to tell you Serj Tankian.
They might not be able to say any of them, but yeah, I agree.
If they could even say any of them. But yeah, I would guarantee that they only either know the guy that does the lead vocals because he sounds so unique, or his name Serj. So that rubs me so many wrong ways. But hey, if they're back to touring and all of that, I mean, that's the end goal, is just, you start a band, hopefully, love of the music, love of the band, all your friends, this, that, the other. So if they're starting to get back to that a little bit, what is your hope or your thoughts, I guess, potentially, on them in the future making another album?
I have fully accepted that they are never, ever going to make an album again. We got the 2 songs in 2020 that I didn't expect. And it's because of things that were going on in Armenia. With the politically charged climate that we have today in America, if that hasn't brought them back, I don't think anything will. And that's fine.
Yeah.
You know what? I've come to terms with it. I used to read all those articles in like 2010 when we were 5 years removed from an album. Like, okay, maybe it could happen. 2025, whatever. I've come to accept the truth. That's fine though, because how many bands can say that they've put out 5 albums? They're still playing massive shows 20 years after their last album released, and all 5 of their albums were good. Even if they weren't all straight like S tier, like I wouldn't say that they have a bad album in their, in their lineup. So whatever. I've come to terms. We'll see what happens.
They were trying to build a prison, and it was for themselves apparently, because that is such a. But you're right. I mean, even as of 2005, they were 20 years, 21 years a band, and obviously before you release your first album, you're probably a band for a year or two before that. Mm-hmm. So 20 plus years as a band. Whatever you just said, 5 albums, they're all heaters. And even the songs that I was kind of gagged and bound to make say are bad songs here, they're still good songs. I mean, like Old School Hollywood and Lost in Hollywood, like they're less, like with Linkin Park, I could find a bad song. With Avenged Sevenfold's Life is But a Dream, I can find a bad song. With this album, I can just find songs that aren't for me. And I'm sure a lot of people can find bad songs here because, they have a very different style and lyrical genius to them. So it's just not for everybody. So that's just going to happen. But here's also something that we got. Ryan has been doing an amazing job of putting out like YouTube shorts and all of that for us. And we got a comment on our Linkin Park album review that it was when I went over the lyrics that I picked out for that week. But I immediately after followed up in saying that I put that RPG on hard mode, and I kind of had to really search for a song that I really enjoyed and lyrics that I really enjoyed. And again, just maybe that album wasn't for us. Still, good 6.5, 7 out of 10, whatever we gave it. But the person was like, they listed, I think, literally the same lyrics that I fucking said were the good ones, which is crazy to me. Because it's like, yeah, no shit. I said those ones were good. But then they were basically like, act like you could write better lyrics than that. Quit shitting on new music. 1, not shitting on it. You named the same lyrics I did. Good comprehension, dumbass. 2, we are a music reviewing podcast among a million other music reviewing podcasts in a scene of reviewing podcasts that review a million things: movies, music, video games, whatever you like. You know what the point of them is because they can't do it themselves. But when you listen to it, when you hear it, and when you have somebody who has made music before in Ryan, and you have somebody who has a distinctly creative brain like myself, you know what is good, what is bad, or at least what is good to you and what is bad to you. You don't have to be better than somebody to critique them. Imagine how many people in this world would be able to be critics if that were the case. Now, granted, a lot of people should have their pen and their paper taken away. Not everybody on the internet should have the voice that they have. But it stun-locked me for a second because I was like, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. And it's so eloquently as Ryan put it, yeah, I couldn't write lyrics like Imagine Dragons, but Imagine Dragons sucks.
I'm just saying. And you know what? I'm also going to say the old phrase is those who can't do, teach. And I was a teacher for 5 years. So here I am now reviewing music. So
there you go.
To end, this is what was I going to say? Let me try that again. To end, this is what the album was rated when it came out by certain sources. AllMusic gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Blabbermouth 4 out of 5. Metacritic 85 out of 100. Pop Matters 9 out of 10. Entertainment Weekly, didn't know they reviewed rock albums. They gave it an A minus. The lowest that I saw was Pitchfork gave it a 7.1 out of 10, and Stylus gave it a B minus. I'd say overall, pretty solid reviews, even from the quote unquote mainstream on this. I would personally give it like an 8.5 out of 10. I know that might seem weird for it being one of my favorite albums of all time, but it's because I can recognize the weak spots. I don't think this album's flawless, but man, it just holds such a special place in my heart. Darren is the ultimate guitar riff writer, master, whatever you want to call him. Serj's vocals are excellent. John's a unique drummer. Shava's great at bass. It just all flows together really well.
What I find so intriguing before I give my rating is that the two bands that are our favorites, yours of course being System of a Down as we're talking here, and mine being Avenged Sevenfold, is because we both revere their guitarists, their lead guitarists, as some of, if not the best in the business. Like, I think when Sinister Gates gets his hands on a solo, you are not outdoing that man. It from MIA to Afterlife to this, that, the other, dude. He because his guitar sound. However, I don't know how you make a guitar sound different. I'm not gonna pretend like I do, but his guitar sound is also just so different than others. It has like a more like hypnotic, spacey sound to it. It's weird. I don't know how to explain it, but it's always been very crazy and unique to me. But also that the lyricists have a unique voice to them. Now, of course, Serj Tankian, much, much more unique than Matt Shadows could ever dream to be. But a lot of people's problem with Avenged Sevenfold is that Matt Shadows doesn't have the greatest voice, and I could see what people are talking about for sure with that. But I like the idea that we find those two specific things to be the reasons that we like these bands so much. But back to this album, I think that even with the two songs that I have identified as maybe just necessarily not being for me, I would also probably give it, I didn't write mine down, so I'm kind of coming up with this on the spot, but I would probably give it like an 8, because like I said, when I came back to this album, I already had most of it on my Spotify. So that just, and for a band that I don't always go out of my way to listen to, but they're still probably in like my top 10 for rock bands, that's impressive, because there's like Avenged Sevenfold albums that I don't have 75% of it downloaded, or Metallica albums that I don't have 75% of it downloaded. So to come back and be like, oh, at one point, and especially because I didn't know they were all from this album, that just means that they all hit individually at a certain time, at the right time, and I thought they were all fantastic. So yeah. I'd be hard pressed to give it anything less than 8 out of 10, I guess. And I could even be convinced to pump it to an 8.5, but I think we're going to stick with an 8.
Yeah, that's fair. So we got an 8 and an 8.5. So, I mean, solid is not doing the album justice, but it's great. Well, thanks everyone for listening to this episode about System of a Down. If you have any recommendations, let us know. The only request we got so far was for Linkin Park, and we did it. So if you want to hear us go and talk about something else, tell us. Let us know. Thanks to the people listening too. Smigs, you got anything to close?
Yeah, this episode is going to be called "Would Trump Like System of a Down?" because that's good clickbait. And two, to our other friend who was listening, that about 2 weeks ago DM'd us and said, "Are you guys down for more suggestions? I have 2 different lists," and then never gave us those lists. What are we on? Where are we at? What are we doing? Why are you hiding in the shadows? Come out to play. We're ready. We're ready. So we don't know what album we're going to do next, but that's maybe okay.
Broadway, we'll see. Since that one's new,
actually, maybe. Yeah, but we have a ton coming down the pipeline. We just need the albums to actually come out first. Yeah. But we did an Avenged Sevenfold album, so we had to do a System of a Down album to kind of encapsulate both of our favorites here. But no, I mean, yeah, any suggestions, any thoughts on System of a Down, any of the band members, and anything we talked about, good, bad, and indifferent comments are all welcome. And you better hope Ryan gets to your comments before I do if they're bad, because I won't be quite as nice as he was to the one I mentioned.
I know the two differences. Cracked me up.
I would have killed him with kindness, but I would have made sure that he got the dagger stuck in him too, because it's just so unfathomably brain dead to me. Remember, you are faceless behind that keyboard, but you're not nameless.
So, like good cop, bad cop.
And we're both bad cop. Anyway, thank you all for listening this week. Thank you so much for rocking with us. Maybe Scars on Broadway next week. Maybe we don't know what it is next week, but you'll find out when it comes out. So suggestions, comments, anything of the like is always appreciated. Thank you to all of those who are already listening to the smooth sounds of Smiggy and
Ryan.
Love you all. See you next time.
Bye.